Thank you, everyone. I am seriously humbled to be standing here and talking on this forum. And I've been given a very important responsibility to introduce you all to the efforts that AMP plans to take, efforts which may likely shape what AMP becomes in the next decade. As we are all aware, the past 10 years have been spent on putting some excellent effort on improving education and employability of Indian Muslims. And I had only heard about what AMP does from people I know. I've been associated only for about 4 months. But I must truly thank everybody of you to have made AMP what it is today. And I truly came to appreciate the strength of AMP today in the past 2 days when I saw you all and when I interacted with you all. So a big thank you. We've been talking, me, Amir Bhai, Syed Bhai and quite a few other people have been talking about this intent of taking to economic development, driving economic development of Indian Muslims as an outcome for the past 3 to 4 months. It hasn't been very long. From then, it kind of made sense to me. When I heard of this intent from Amit Bhai, it made sense to me that education and employability levels have gone up, yet we still face a lot of other issues in terms of making Indian Muslims at par, bringing in Muslims at par in terms of economic development with other SRCs. It made sense to me. So I got talking. We had a few interactions. Over the past 3-4 months, we have done a few things. We have brought together about 150 to 200 very senior professionals. Some of them we are fortunate to have in this group today. We have connected with a lot of corporate and non-profit organizations, have got to understand what they are doing today in this space. We have understood what are the broad issues that need to be addressed, and a big thank you to the work that Dr. Amitabh Kundu has done, without which we would possibly still be trying to find the basics. We have brainstormed various perspectives on what may be solutions to these problems, and we have gotten familiar with a lot of successful models. Some of those models have been presented yesterday and day before, especially let me mention by people like Mr. Osama Manzar in the opening talks. All this while, the important question that we have been trying to answer is, what is the role of AMP in this whole pursuit? It is extremely important to pin down that role before we get into this session. My role is today to try and articulate what that role is from what we think so far. Now, when you're trying to identify the role of an organization in any pursuit, the answer often lies at the intersection of two things. The first is the core competence of the organization, and the second is the problem that the organization is trying to solve. The core competence question was easy. It wasn't very difficult to answer. I see AMP's core competence in this context to be on three dimensions. The first dimension is that AMP is more seen as a professionals brand than a Muslim brand. AMP has established itself as a group of professionals. They happen to be Muslims, and it's seen as a neutral organization which can take a step into this direction without taking a political or a social split angle to this issue. Number two, AMP has a very wide reach. We have 80 chapters. We have chapters across India. We have volunteers who are already engaged with us on multiple activities, and that reach forms the second dimension of the competence, core competence that AMP brings to the table. The third thing is equally important. While we have these connections and resources, AMP has been very successful in mobilizing resources in the programs that it has delivered. And while it is easy to ignore, but the amount of work that it takes to really set up processes and organization systems to make this run smoothly takes decades to set up. So these are the three dimensions of the core competency that I believe in which context we need to see the role of AMP in the next decade. Now that one was easy. What's our core competency? It's on these three dimensions. The other thing took us a little time to answer. The problem that we are trying to solve in this space of economic development took us some time to answer. We have some perspectives on what are the problems that we are trying to solve, and I'll try and go one by one on those things. Let's get into the first problem. I'm trying to put forth some numbers. There are about 30 lakh registered NGOs in India by some estimate. I believe even if 10% of them are working directly or indirectly towards the cause of Indian Muslims development, that would make it 3 lakh NGOs. There are about 4 lakh mosques in India. Most of them would be in some form or the other influencing economic choices that Indian Muslims make. There are more than thousands or rather thousands of madrasas in India. Again, these are the thought beds where economic choices and perspectives about economy get rooted. A quick web search of Muslim plus Chamber of Commerce plus India gives you at least 25 Muslim Chamber of Commerce organizations across India. At least 100 Muslim colleges exist, colleges which have majority Muslim population and run by Muslim corporate organizations. There are about 15 lakh businesses in India, and even if I consider 15 lakh registered businesses in India, even if I consider 1% of them to be Muslim owned, that would mean 15,000 Muslim run businesses are employing Muslims and indirectly influencing some form of economic development activity through CSR and other activities. Now that is great news. There is so much of work that people are doing in this space, but therein lies an opportunity for us. An opportunity to connect all of these stakeholders into a very powerful network. An opportunity to, more importantly, offer a framework where these local stakeholders can come together, objectively look at local priorities and apply some method to the, I would say, the madness that goes on in terms of implementing these initiatives. So that's one of the opportunities that we see. I have no doubt with the core competence of AMP, we have the ability to bring together the right professionals to accomplish this task. Hence, building the network and the ecosystem for driving on-ground change and even funding is one of the missions that we propose to take up at AMP. Let me get into the second opportunity that I see. Over the past few months, we have interacted with multiple organizations and leaders who have been involved in this space of driving economic development as an outcome. I have observed a couple of things very strongly in this. One, there is no disagreement among all that education is the single most important outcome that will lead to economic development. However, when I go beyond education, I believe that the views are very diverse and mixed. There is very little consensus on what beyond education is the priority of the Muslim community. I also see that most of the opinions are rooted in the current equilibrium of the industry. I haven't seen anybody really speak about what happens when disruptions like Industry 4.0, automation, wipe out jobs which have been traditionally the strongholds of Indian Muslims. Or phenomena like shifting to trade of services, what happens to that? What happens to people who are right now engaged in small-time businesses and trading of products? This brings us to a second problem, where we believe that there is a need for consensus among all the stakeholders that are involved in economic development of Indian Muslim, and there is no reason to not believe in AMP's ability to bring together a forum, bring together thought leaders in this space and drive building that consensus among these thought leaders and organizations. So, building common understanding and goals and priorities among all stakeholders involved in this space becomes our second mission towards economic development activities. There are a couple of quick initiatives that we have started thinking about. One of them would be to put together some form of an annual thought leaders conference and form a very senior mentors council who can actively engage with AMP and other organizations in this space to drive conversations around the priorities and goals for Indian Muslims. And we believe a good, well thought out draft of economic agenda will come out of these activities. That's another project that we intend to work on. Going to the third priority. There is so much of work happening in this space around economic development, and we heard yesterday from very strategic thinkers like Mr. Amir Manapat, from Mr. Osama Manzar, and we were really amazed by the kind of work that they are doing in this space. The point I'm trying to drive is that there is a lot of the area of economic development is not a very simple solution, will not have simple solutions. There is a lot of strategic insight and strategic solution building that may be required in driving change on ground. For example, we spoke of, Mr. Amir Manapat spoke about how he stumbled upon an insight that madrasa students, after having spent 12 years of their time just doing Hifzul Quran, are so developed in terms of their ability to learn that in 4 years' time they are passing out better than all other peers who have gone through 12 years of education. Now, this is an insight that is worth really thinking about and converting it into a proper model which can be handed down to people across organizations across the country and replicate this model in some way. There are multiple such avenues available. We have laid down a set of people who can possibly put some insight, throw some insight on some of these strategic solutions. So for instance, we have Mr. Dinesh Nandwana, who is driving a brilliant on-ground business which makes a real impact on the lives of the entrepreneurs that get involved. Now that's an opportunity to partner with an organization of this size and of this stature to drive through some of our NGO partners, which kind of becomes a win-win model for both parties. And there are some other viewpoints that I would definitely like to hear from everybody else on this room. So a third mission that we think is extremely important for us to pick up is to conceptualize the right strategic partnerships and programs that can be pushed through this vast network of NGOs and other organizations that are working in this space to ensure that the results that we drive, the returns that we get on the investments that we make are not suboptimal. So that's it from me. My job was to really set the context of what AMP is looking to do. We decided to start with this talk because it puts perspective to what each of the speakers are going to talk. We would like to begin with Professor Kundu, who will take us through a lot of details in terms of how he sees the status of economic status of Indian Muslims, and then we will follow it up with each of the speakers who will bring in their expertise in terms of highlighting possible strategic solutions to the status of Indian Muslims that we stand in today. I'd like to, before I sign off, I'd like to summarize the 3 areas that we see as missions. The first mission that I see is to, really sorry about this. I want to get the wording right and hence allow me a minute. Okay, so there are these 3 areas that we believe we should make our mission. Number 1, we build common understanding on goals and priorities among all stakeholders in our community. Number 2, we build a network and ecosystem for driving on-ground change and driving funding. And number 3, to conceptualize the right initiatives, right strategic programs and partnerships which will help us get better return on investment on the spends that happen in this space. The best thing to say at this moment is Inshallah.